And we just started a 50% off sale on sugar today, so make sure you check that as well. So without further ado, these are 3 of my favorite engineer producers, all residing very closely to each other in Nashville. And here are the beards.
Boom.
Have fun, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting. We have 3 beards today.
Yes.
It's three beards.
Welcome
and I know
among the
Jacquire's beard isn't exactly a COVID beard either. He's had this for a while.
Yeah. No, he's keeping it clean.
He used to be the cleanest shaved guy. I mean, he used to be high and tight. Everything perfect, coughed.
Yeah, and I saw some pictures of myself, and I'm just like, I just not digging the financial manager look.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, on his way to his job there in Brentwood.
Right. It's like, oh yeah. Man, how's the youth group minister thing going?
Well, I grew up with long. I had long hair until I was from the time I was a little kid until I was in my early 30s, and cut it all off. And then adulthood just kind of my grooming, I guess, just became a little too adult.
Yeah.
And now you're reverting. You're going back.
Right.
It happens.
Oh, hey everybody. Hey everybody. Welcome. Absolutely on here with a couple of my favorite people in the whole world, Jacquire and Reid. Luckily for Reid and I, and maybe Jacquire, we all live in the same town, more or less. And we get to see each other outside of this business, although we're all so busy that it takes I mean, now we can't see each other
when we're allowed outside.
When we're allowed, but it is great to have Jacquire here in town. Absolutely one of my favorite recording engineers. I don't have any idea how he makes these beautiful, amazing sounding records, and I just aspire to be him someday. And he's aspiring to be my beard at the moment, or maybe Reid's beard. I don't know, but So hey, Jacquire, thanks for coming and hanging out.
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are 2 of my favorite people, and I love your beards. I love your work more than that.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, thanks. So,
right, well,
what are you doing?
Yeah, what's going on?
I've mostly just been mixing. It's like I haven't, like everybody, have not had attended sessions for quite some time. I've kind of lost track of the weeks. So I've been mixing stuff. Did a remix with my friend Dallas with City and Color. Just helping some friends with mixes and doing everything in Luna, just because it's an opportunity to learn that and do that. I do have my first attended session on Thursday, which I'm excited about, and excited to see a couple friends. It's everybody. It's a few people that live here that I know, and I trust that they've been, sheltering and staying away from people and in quarantine.
I have my first session coming up on Monday, and the 3 members of the band have all had it 12 weeks ago. So they've been through the whole thing, and it hasn't bounced back. So we're gonna march forward and try to make it happen. But
I've got a session in like 5 days, and it's going to involve 4 singers, a producer in Nashville, a producer in Prague, and producers in Tokyo. And we're going to try and do it in this
holy time zone.
Huh? Yeah, I know.
Holy time zone.
We're going to try and do it totally quarantined, because the last thing I want to do is get session singers sick with a respiratory virus. So we're going to take some pretty extreme measures. Should be interesting.
So are the singers going to join you in the studio, Reid, or?
We're actually we're doing it at Addiction, and the way it's going to work is the singers have their own separate entrance. They're going to be separated by about at 12 to 15 feet. They have their own bathroom. They'll never come in the control room. I'll be in the control room. The producer will be like 15 feet behind me, communicating with his crew. I'll be up front, running the tool, and that's it. Like that's hopefully we're not going to, cross-contaminate or whatever.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think going forward, we just need to trust people that, that people have been being smart and quarantining and taking care, and otherwise I think we could just kind of live in this twilight zone unknown for a long time.
I'm not a big fan of the whole living in fear thing, but the thing that I don't want is, my wife has asthma, and so I don't want to bring it home to her. And by the same token, like I want to try my best to, I'm staying away from everybody. I'm here by myself. Normally I have Mike here every day. I'm here by myself. Somebody's working up front, but that's a whole nother deal. I just am trying my best to stay out of places. I had to go to Home Depot on Saturday morning, and man, that was a lot of fucking people, and half of them with no mask or gloves. And, I'm wearing masks and I'm wearing my work gloves and walking around like a space creature, and buying conduit shit, but, and landscape wire, that was my weekend. So, but yeah, so well, cool. So, so Jacquire, we got a lot of questions. All right.
Let's talk it up.
I know we could just, bullshit basically for a while here because, we haven't seen each other in a while and, miss you and all, but people don't give a shit about that. They want to hear Jacquire talk. So there were some questions down here, and I thought maybe you get to the easy one here, and because I always found this one interesting, and that's where you're talking about phase relationship, as in moving speakers forward, maybe moving speakers backwards. A lot of people don't, do this, and I think it's kind of cool. I accidentally do it, but not because I really wanted to. I just accidentally do it because of the way I want to see. I do use a phase checker on microphones, and the way I want to see certain things on the phase checker is where my phase ends up. So, so explain that a little bit, maybe. And some of the folks on here haven't seen your video, but I say, hey.
Well, I guess there's phase, which is just the 180-degree relationship between two microphones, or
some variants of that.
Yeah, somewhere in between. But then polarity is just it's either the positive acoustic energy that's captured by a microphone is creating a positive electrical signal, which is documented in your however you're storing. If you're storing it on tape or in a hard drive, whatever. So it's like, I think of in recording, there's three elements. There's the transducers, which are the microphones and the speakers. There's the storage, which is tape or a hard drive or whatever. And then you have amplifiers that manage all of it. Those are the three basic elements. So, a microphone, it is creating an electrical impulse based on acoustic energy. And so that's sort of the sound as it comes to you in a space. And so the transducer on the other side, the speaker, is what's meant to kind of recreate that energy in space in front of us. And, so I want the speaker to move towards me. I want it to move out. So the positive amplitude should be pushing the speaker. A speaker is designed to operate that way. A transient is the way a speaker is constructed. That transient energy as it begins is supposed to push the speaker. To me, it sounds better when something, even a source, single microphone, like if it's on a kick drum, if all you're listening to the kick drum there's a difference between the polarity. If it's the kick drum is pulling the speaker versus pushing the speaker, it's a different sound. And I always wanted to push the speaker. And so people think about the relationship of polarity and phase when they're multi-miking things. So drums are like the perfect thing. So you want all your microphones to be in as a phase agreement as possible. But for me, I also want them to be pushing the speaker to kind of create that more powerful representation of the acoustic energy. And
So-
and then, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when you track, do you use a polarity tester to check everything?
I do not, because I have, because for me, and this is not a comment on what anybody else does, but for me, that I've worked so hard and thought about it so much, and that I just want to use my ears, and then I use the visual. I use a visual representation as confirmation. But there's a lot of variables in that. Now, Vance works with Mike, and they probably have a very specific regimented way of doing things. But if the intern or assistant is not holding the clicker source at the microphone in the right way, and someone's not measuring the speaker the right way, then that stuff can be skewed. And that
yeah, go
ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the interesting thing about that is that some of these conversations about speakers pushing and pulling and different things are all also a little bit like you can think yourself into a circle on this, and I'll get that. I've found that using one of these little little clicker Galaxy audio thing, so it gets the click. If you put this up to a kick drum and you just put the speaker, which is right here, up to the kick drum, and then for me, I don't use my ProAx. I use an NS10. I know that's crazy, but if I use an NS10 that I've set up in my room, and I just put the other end of this, the receiver, this guy, and I get a positive click here. So just so anybody knows what these are. If you get that green knob there, a little green button, that will be pushing the speaker. Now, what's weird is if you go to the ProAct, it won't be. So you have to kind of figure out a little bit of what is, what direction is what. But like one of the interesting things with what you were saying is that if on the kick drum you want the speaker to push, the reality is that's actually backwards from what the microphone is seeing. Because the head moving forward on a kick drum would actually be pushing the diaphragm in, which is the reverse of pushing the speaker out. Well,
yeah, but it's almost like a translation. So like if
I totally get it. I'm just saying that if you're purely, and like snare drum, that when you hit a snare drum, the head is actually moving away from the microphone.
Right.
So it tends to be a deal like I know a lot of people get all caught up in the conversation about polarity versus phase, but I'm with you. If I get the plus sign on here, the green plus sign, that means my speaker's moving towards me, and that's what I want.
Well, the bottom line, I think, on it is whenever you're doing this, and especially mixing, if you're not checking the polarity on everything, the relationship between the snare, the kick, the overheads, the room, sometimes it matters, sometimes not. And then especially for me, if you're using any samples, the difference between the sample in polarity and out of polarity is night and day. It really can make the sound like from a great snare sound to something that sounds really weird.
100%. The other thing, and the thing is you can have, the other thing to me is that part of what gets overlooked is that a single track, a single source has a different distinct sound, like pushing versus pulling the speaker. To me, it always sounds better when the source is pushing the speaker. It EQs more easily and more accurately. It also translates, because if the speaker is being pulled to represent a transient, the way that translates and functions on different speakers is going to be more variable, because if the speaker is trying to produce a transient by going in, then it engages the space and the physicality of the speaker. And so that changes the sound dramatically from speaker to speaker. But then it's also, for me, it's just like I want to make sure, like maybe my DI and my amp signal on my bass are in agreement. But I want to make sure that they're pushing the speaker, because I also want the kick drum to be pushing the speaker. If my drum kit is in agreement and I like the way it sounds and it's pushing the speaker, but my bass is in agreement, but it's pulling the speaker, well, then that's kind of a bad sound too, because the relationship between them means that while the kick drum's trying to push and the bass is trying to pull, they're kind of nulling each other, and that makes the sound even more erratic. So and this is like not, my rule is not that everything has to push the speaker, because polarity and phase is a choice, because you use different relationships to create dimension, but it's good to know that you are kind of making a choice to sort of break the rule, or I guess, if you want to say it that way.
I just mixed this live Stray Cats thing, and Lee Rocker, playing upright bass, he changes basses several times during the show. Oh. Every one of his basses is out of phase with all the, so on stage you can't really tell, but the DI is out of phase from the amp. And actually, while we did a record together, he's got a little purse. I know that sounds weird, but it's like a little, like a fanny pack of piezo pickups. And so he'll pull one out and stick it in and plug it in and start playing through the amp. No, we'll unplug that one, I'll plug another one in. But just flipping the piezo one way or the other changes the phase. So I mixed, there were 23 songs in this thing, and every single song was a different phase on every single track. It was just, it was like, holy cow, man.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Well, that reminds me, like when you're recording bass or guitar and you get everything all set and then you add a new pedal in.
Oh yeah.
Like you change a pedal. A guitar pedal is like the number one thing that'll flip the phase on you, flip the polarity on you. So you got to always be checking all that stuff. It's not a set and forget.
I tend to record with 2 mics on guitars and 2 guitar amps. Like I kind of like the sound of 2 different amps. And it's interesting. We'll be like, oh, let's use the Princeton and then the, an AC30, and you plug them in and they're wild. They're totally out of phase because just amp manufacturers decided which direction the speakers pushed or pulled, And so it's one of those things you've got to check it. Well, and I can't tell you the number of times, this, Reid, we get stuff to mix, both of you guys, and there'll be guitar amps, they'll all be in and out of phase.
Yeah, so you just mute all the ones except the one that sounds good. Here, this will drive you crazy. When I was doing a record with Bukovac a minute ago, and he was talking about how Joe Walsh liked to take 2 amps and put them facing each other, and then put a ribbon mic in between the 2 amps.
In between them?
So we started fooling around with that, and it was I gotta say, it was pretty cool. It was pretty fun to be able to have one amp with reverb and one amp that was not, and then you could move one backwards or forwards and change the way it sounded, and it was pretty interesting.
There is a cool little trick.
That's an exciting idea.
Yeah. There's a cool little trick I do want to throw out there for everybody. If you get the crickets, right, when you're setting up your bass rig, right, and like I kind of like having a bass amp, a bass DI. I like the bass DI to be dry, and then the amp to get all the distortion and echo and reverb and all the, all that shit. But sometimes I'll also have a room mic in the room, which is totally another deal. We won't talk about that. But I'll hook this up and record a few seconds of this. And then that'll allow me to set the phase time delay later when we mix. It works really well doing this. So
speaking of setups, Jacquire, somebody was asking, and we can just transition into this. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
What's your go-to approach starting point for tracking drums?
Well, my very first thing, you got to select the drum kit that you think is the right for the tune. And I mean, typically for me, I change, the toms are probably the things that change the least across a project, but the kick drum, the kick drum changes somewhat frequently. Snare drum almost every song, cymbals, hi-hats almost every song. So kind of get that stuff selected. Depending on, always in the room I'm recording in, I try to find the best spot for the drums, where I feel like it's gonna be the most balanced, I'm gonna have the most control, get the most ambience out of the room, and then how
do you do that? I mean, how do you make that choice?
Well, I try to find a spot in the room where I feel like that the low end reinforcement and the tightness of the room is going to be the best place where I put the drums. I don't want to put so I tend to kind of be closer to walls, you know, the drummer's back to a wall, and kind of projecting the sound out
corners.
into the room. I don't like putting drums in the middle of the room most of the time. Now that's a sound because it's just all very diffused and there's nothing that reinforces the low end. So I try to find that reinforcement spot in the room and where it's a little bit drier, and that the sound as it goes out into the room is going to be a little bit more ambient. Like in my little studio space, one side of the room is drier than the other. And then I'll take the kick drum and I'll find the spot where I feel like the kick drum has the most punchy, balanced resonance. And because moving it back and forth away, closer or farther away from the wall, 6 inches can make a lot of difference in the way that low end is reinforced. So once I find that sweet spot for the kick drum, then I set the kit up around that. Typically, always tune the drums to the key of the song. Primarily use the root and the fifth. But then it also depends on. Sometimes you can't.
So what's your root? What's the root? First tom? Tom, is it your root?
I was just going to say it depends on where you want to have the tuning of the drums sit, like how tight you want them to be, and then you kind of have to just pick how close is the floor tom to a note that's a usable note, or is the snare? Can I put the snare drum on the tonic on the root, and then if that's on the root, then probably the rack tom should try to be on the fifth. Maybe. Yeah. And just try to find where they're close and where I can get them to fit. And that's what I was going to say. Sometimes you can't get a drum to like the first or the fourth, sometimes or the fifth. So sometimes you have to pick, but you usually don't want to tune a drum to like the second or the sixth. It usually doesn't work out. So I tune the drum.
Tune 135. 135. Bump bump bump. 135.
Totally.
But
totally. The third can work too. It just depends on, something that, because sometimes, I like bluesy or kind of rock stuff, and it vacillates between major minor. So
is that hard and fast, or sometimes you just find that the drum sounds better at a certain tuning that may or may not match the song?
If that's the case, then I just try to make it as, tonally transparent as possible. Because like sometimes a snare drum it just feels like it's white noise. It doesn't have a lot of overtone and note to it. So it can kind of be atonal sometimes, but typically I'm looking to whatever the note choice is, or whether or not it's on a note that's in the song or not, it's just I just want to make sure that the drums don't feel like they're like just rubbing or dissonant with the harmonic structure of what I think the recording is going to be.
I think it's interesting to point out that when we asked you about how you normally, set up for drums, that you're going to spend 10 minutes talking about placement and tuning and all of that stuff before we even start touching on microphones and things like that.
I'm a source first, because engineering. Certainly I feel powerful with engineering tools, but the sound is always going to hang together better, be more cohesive and powerful the less we have to do as engineers.
Absolutely.
So it's get the source right, and then it's like I like a mono overhead. I'll typically mic the hi-hat. Sometimes both toms. Sometimes I don't mic the rack tom. A kick drum mic, a snare drum mic, and then depends on what I'm going for. But then I probably have one mic somewhere close that I'm blowing up with some compression, just to kind of give a lot of really forward, tough mid-range. Put some mono mics out. I'll kind of walk the room and I'll find a sweet spot in the room where I feel like the snare drum is really clear and the sound that I'm going to capture there is very complementary to the picture of the drums. And that, because when you walk around, it's just like, oh wow, the cymbals are really loud over here. I'm not going to put mics over here, or the snare drum sounds really focused in this spot, so I'm going to grab that. Then I just kind of go from there. I try to mix up the mic pre's and stuff as well. I I don't always put the same kind of mic pre's across the drums. You know, I typically try to use the same pre's on the kick and snare. But you know, my console over there, when I use that, that's kind of a sound to put
a good one.
Yeah. And then I just kind of go from there. I compress the overhead a little bit. I compress the snare with a distressor. I typically don't compress the kick drum a whole lot when I'm recording. If I need that, I'll do it in the mix. I compress the room mics usually pretty decently, and just kind of put it all together. I try to make it's like if I can record a drum kit in like 8 or less microphones, that's my goal.
That's always my goal, and then I always somehow end up with 10. You know, so or I end up with 5. It's it's kind of one of those.
Well, on the Modest Mouse record, I was recording, the good news for people who love bad news. It's like we were tracking that on 16 track, and I had I think maybe I had eight tracks available for drums, which was kind of a lot, I just went ahead and mixed I put a little bit of gating on the toms, and I just so I was maybe gating them like 4 to 6 dB each. And it was pretty loose, pretty forgiving, but mostly shutting them down. And I just blended them in with the overhead tracks. So I printed those 4 mics to 2 tracks. It's just like, well, okay, I want close tom sounds, but I need the overheads and I need all these other sounds. So how am I going to make this work? And I just committed to it, and it was fine.
Right.
Interesting. So kick my ass, because I do almost completely the opposite. When I track drums, I'll have 15 mics of drums. Not that they'll all be on at the same time, but I've found it really fun to be like, if someone's like, okay, we're doing this song and we want it hi-fi, it's like, boom, there it is. And then someone's like, I don't know, man, this isn't working. And I can literally go off. There's a 3 mic setup, turn that off. There's a 1 mic overhead with a kick drum and going through like, a smash bus or something. Just instantly have 3 different sounds.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If you have the tracks to do that, and you're the one who's going to have to mix it, I mean, that's part of the deal. A lot of times for me, like, and Jacquire's talking about doing 16 track. I mean, if you're doing 16 track, if you have more than 6 drum tracks, you're really fucked, because that's you can't print enough signal of like individual things on a track to keep it quiet.
Right.
So like 6 tracks, the Raconteurs record I did, 6 tracks of drum. The one that, Joe tracked it, I mixed it. 6 tracks of drums, 2 tracks of bass. That was 8 tracks on the first 16 track. And then a couple tracks of guitar each. And that was the whole band. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way you just kind of have to go.
Well, maybe it'd be a good challenge for people out there to just say, the next thing I'm going to track a maximum of 16 tracks for the entire record, and see what happens.
The next record.
Awesome exercise.
The next record I'm doing is 2 tracks of drum. The next record I'm doing is 2 tracks of drums. Period.
Well,
because I'm cutting.
Since we're talking about drums, Magnus said a lot of mixers seem to replace kicks and snares when they mix. Why don't they use original instruments? And what's your opinions on that?
I only use samples when I feel like I have to, or I need to, or it's or it's like it's a part of the production. Like the production should sound that way. What I've gotten into doing is, because I always make drums. I mean, I like the drum sounds I get. So at the end of every song, I'll make samples just so that I have it for posterity. Posterity. But I've got into this thing a couple years ago. I don't, but that I'll take my own drum samples from that drum kit.
Yep.
And I will sample replace, but I won't fully say. I'll like maybe do a 50-50 blend. So I'm using my sound as a sample. And because it's a sample, it's very consistent, but I make the mixture maybe 50%, so that I'm still getting the leakage, but I'm reducing the leakage. And it's all the same thing. But then my kick and snare especially are like, I just choose the great samples and have done that. And I think that can be cool. I don't do it all the time. My goal is always when I mic and record a drum kit, I want my kick and snare especially to sound like samples, you know, when I'm recording. That's kind of my goal. Do they ever really truly sound like samples? Well, no, because there's the dynamic of the player, but that's my goal.
Right.
And the drum leveler plugin by Sound Radix it's something I discovered in the last year and have been using. I really love the way that works. That you know, because it not only is it a compressor, but it's an expander and a gate, and you can kind of use it very, very well.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, and Enrico asked a good question. He's like, would you guys suggest the less mics approach for heavy music with big guitars? And I think it's, you know, it really depends on what you're doing. If it's a dream theater thing where there's all this intricate cymbal work and there's like 6 toms and, you know, there's all that stuff, it's going to be different than if it's Queens of the Stone Age where they're deliberately doing something that's really dry, really tight, really small so that the guitars have a lot of room.
I mean, I did the last Clutch record, and there's 8 tracks of drums with rooms on that record. So, you know, I mean, there's 2 room mics and then a kick drum, a snare drum, toms, stereo. Luckily, he only plays 2 toms, so one's high, one's low. Overheads, you know, hi-hat was in the overhead mix. Done, you know. I mean, I think maybe there might have been my little crashy, smashy mic as the 9th track, but that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think if you're capturing like the 2 examples are great. If you're capturing all the detail of, if you can accurately capture the detail of what the drummer's doing, then it should be appropriate. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really matter that what the genre of music is necessarily.
I will say after doing the Clutch record that heavy music, metal, you know, hard rock, whatever you want to call it, that whole crowd, they have a sort of a thing that they expect, because the Clutch records before were very processed, as the best word I could say. I mean, they're just very cut and edited and perfect and all that. And I didn't want to do that. We didn't want to do that. We wanted it to feel more like the band live in a room. And half of the fans loved it and thought it was the greatest thing ever. And half of them hate that record more than, you know, every other record they've always done. So it's just one of those things. You know, you can't fucking worry about that shit. You just make the best record you can possibly make.
Yeah, you made art. You guys made a piece of art, and that's what you should be doing. I mean,
one man's boy howdy. You know,
there's so many samples in heavy music, anyways, that I think that you'll probably get a better result minimally miking a drum kit and then adding the samples to flesh it out, as opposed to a bunch of mics on a drum kit and then adding samples. That just sounds like a lot of unnecessary work.
I have a good friend. And you guys know who he is. I just won. No, I have a good friend who just did a record where there were 47 microphones on the drum kit.
Wow. Awesome.
And you solo any one of them, and it does not sound like a great drum picture.
No,
you know, because you can't put that many mics on something and put them all together and have them equal something where the individual elements actually stand on their own.
I couldn't even imagine it. 40, it was 47 tracks, I think. 47, 48 tracks.
Hey, Pete just said, when we were talking about blending mics, he said, how do you suggest blending if you're tracking without a console?
Yeah.
Do in the box. I mean,
it's tough.
You can't really do it. There are so many reasons why people want to use a console when tracking.
Yeah, that's the number one reason, blending microphones.
Yeah, blending microphones. And the other, would you agree or not, is the sound of the console.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I was
thinking about that. Like, I was like, man, I wish that there was some box that I could use to blend guitar mics and be able to control polarity, and and to blend like some drum mics too. Sometimes I do it through an Altec, but I don't have 4 Altecs. So, the other way you guys can do it if you don't have a console is, just record it to a stereo track and put the trim plug in, assign it to a mono output, or pan them the same way, and put the trim plug in and turn up and turn down, and that's
there's also another really cool plugin in Pro Tools that just recently made it into the current version, and that's the down mixer. So if you have, let's say you record 4 tracks of guitars, you could make a quad track. I know that sounds crazy, and then put down mixer, and you could down mix that to stereo or down mix it.
I use that for snare drums sometimes for mixing. Yeah, it's really
Nice.
cool.
That used to be a developer only plugin, which is kind of weird that suddenly back a couple revisions back, it just popped up in Pro Tools.
Okay,
Pro Tools 9 or
so
something.
relating to this, Jacquire, a question from Eric says, so much is happening with the drum treatment on Mute Math's first record. How did you approach getting that much sound from such a minimal kit?
Well, there's a lot of samples, and it's I mean, part of that stuff was like recorded, like we're using a boombox for a microphone, so we're definitely using some alternate capture, lenses, if you will, microphone kind of scenarios. It's very layered. It's deceivingly stacked with some samples, and it's mixed, and that stuff is mixed to be very, very loud. It's very, if you look at if you were to kind of go back and look at the balances, I mean, yeah, sure, there's an overhead and stuff, but with the amount of sort of compression and that was being applied, the overhead, like the overheads are like -20 compared to the kick drum, being at kind of 0, because by the time that it gets hit with all that compression, it kind of then makes it sound like a drum kit again, as opposed to just a kick drum. And it's just a lot of samples, a lot of homemade samples on that too.
So there was another question that plays right into this from Russ. It says, how do you guys decide what lives at the bottom of the mix? Like, who wins down there?
I guess we're talking about low end, right? Like
I would assume, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I mean, I think for me personally, I kind of choose whether the bass or the kick drum has the lowest frequency content. Like one of them's got it. It's hard to make them equal members in the very bottom end. So you kind of have to pick who sits on top of who. Some people are like kind of do it one way or the other. I kind of go back and forth depending on what I feel like the track needs, or the genre of music may dictate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you definitely have to carve space, around each other. They can't have the same low end.
It seems to me like if it's a rock and roll band, it's the kick drum, period. If the bass, if it's an R&B band, if it's an R&B track or a soul track or something, it feels like it's got to be the bass to me. So it's one of those things like if there's a lot of articulation, like a lot of notes, a lot of stuff happening in the bass, probably needs to be above the kick drum, whereas the kick sits underneath it and drives the 1, drives the 3, or drives the 1, 2, 3, 4, however it works. But it's one of those things. I'm currently, the thing I'm mixing right now, the bass and the kick are really fast and happening a lot in the track, and it's cool that they're just right together. But the bass, where he's playing, is actually under the kick drum because he's playing a 5-string. So it's a really fast, almost jazzy sort of thing. So I sort of have the kick drum above the low note of the bass.
And doing R&B
it works both ways.
I spent a lot of time with like Tommy Sims working on R&B type stuff. And what we always tried to do is make the kick and the bass almost the same instrument, and I'll tell you what record is a really great example of that mixing technique, especially, I mean, it's a hip hop, is what Joey Rea did on Run the Jewels Volume 3. The second and third songs on that record, it's amazing. You can actually hear spots in the songs where the kick and the bass are hitting at the same time, and then it'll just be the kick, and then it'll just be the bass, and then they marry back together, and it's just this solid instrument. It's like one instrument. I always thought that was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
hey, Jacquire, so a lot of people are interested about your time with Tom Waits. So can you maybe, I mean, I know you've probably gone over this in a lot of other ways, but sort of tell us how that came about, and then how that was, because people are interested.
Yeah,
inquiring minds want to know.
It was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity because I'm a huge Tom Waits fan. Even before I got to work with him, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I kind of went on like this year-long trek around the world journey, and I took like 6 albums with me. Tom Waits was one of them. I was working at a studio in San Francisco with some friends of mine that I helped them sort of open a studio, and we were doing a lot of remixes. And so Philip, who was one of the owners, I was producing remixes. I was working on remixes with him. Tom was leaving Island Records, asked the A&R person for a recommendation for somebody in the Bay Area that had traditional recording skills, knew tape very well, but also was like hip to Pro Tools and could use Pro Tools. And so the A&R staff, I'm drawing a blank on the person's name. Kim Bowie. Kim Bowie.
Kim Bowie.
Yeah. So Kim was at Island Records. Tom asked her, and so she thought of my friend Philip that I was working for, and to refer him, because she didn't realize that he wasn't an engineer. So Philip got the call. Then he said, "No, Jacquire's the guy you want to talk to." And then so I was at home. It was one morning. I was at home, and he called me up, and he said, "Hey, stay where you are. Tom Waits is going to call you." And I thought he was playing a prank on me because he knows what a big fan I was. And so I waited about an hour, and the phone rang, and it was Tom. And he asked if I would be available to come up to Prairie Sun, which is a studio about an hour north of the city. Go up there and meet him in Sebastopol, exactly. Up there near Petaluma and all that stuff, in Santa Rosa.
Beautiful.
And it's amazing up there. So I went up there, met with Tom and Kathleen, had a long conversation, talked a lot about Alan Lomax and our love of field recording. Asked me if I'd be willing to record in a dumpster. And I told him, absolutely, man. Wherever you want to record, I'm there. Yeah. And I got invited back for a session where he was trying out a lot of new musicians. This session was an absolute disaster shit show. Everything, the studio wasn't working. Every one of us were like super nervous. All the musicians were bombing out. I think myself and a saxophone player made it through the gauntlet. I just could not apologize enough, that things were taking so long, that things weren't working right. I think, I don't know what impression I left, but I was asked back, and it was an amazing thing making that. So that record became Mule Variations, and it was really amazing. I mean, because at Prairie Sun, we were recording. I was in the control room for Studio B, but all the buildings are very separate. Like Studio A was in this other building because it's on an old chicken ranch. So it's just a bunch of farm buildings that have been converted into studio spaces. I was in the Studio B control room, and Tom was in another building like 75 yards away. So you couldn't see him. It wasn't easy to you had to sprint over there to move a microphone. And I mean, it was absolutely amazing. Like Big in Japan has Primus as the rhythm section, and we had so many musicians coming in. And we would typically record with Tom and one or maybe two other musicians, and he wouldn't really show anybody the song. It just kind of like launch into it, and we were recording, and you kind of had to follow along. So it taught me a lot about just being in the moment. That performance is the most important thing, because when Tom starts playing that the density of the air changes around. You know, just changes in the space. It's just really, you just feel like something really special is happening, and I better get this shit right. You know, and
I kind of I felt that way with Jack White when he straps a guitar on or steps behind the mic to sing. It's just like, okay, now we're doing something.
So was Tom playing and singing at the same time?
Always. Yeah, always. I think we did fix a few vocals, but we generally didn't overdub. I mean, the take really was about, you know, I think more than anything is just like how Tom was vibing and how the vocal was. The rest of it matters, of course, but it's only if all that feels right, you know.
So when you go back and listen to that, you know, like, can you think of something that you're the most happy with? And then remember the conversation we were having before we went online. Can you think of something that you were just, I wish I hadn't have done that?
No,
on that one,
he's too good.
No. Listen. Just the other day I was struggling with something that, you know, I just couldn't really like. But, you know, it's weird. I mean, even the conversation we were having before, Vance said this. It's like some of those tunes that you just never feel comfortable with when you finish and hand off. The artist and the manager is like, oh, yep, they love the way that one sounds. It's like, you know, it's like, how do I know? And sometimes the things I think are the most satisfying to me and feel the best, other people don't resonate with them as strongly as I do. So
yeah, the songs I love ends up being B-sides that never get released.
So how do you
shows you what I know?
How do you stop yourself from overthinking?
Well, Tom actually taught me a really good lesson, because that record was all on analog, was mixed without automation. No song on the album was less than 6 mixes, you know. So it's like, and he'd come in, he'd like, I'd have to be, and you know, Oz Fritsch was also the other engineer on the record. Oz and I should just, you know, include Oz and clarify. Oz and I spent like the first couple weeks working together, so that we were on the same page. Like we kind of co-engineered the beginning of the record, maybe not even 2 weeks, might've been just a week. So that when we would come back separately, because that's kind of how Tom wanted to do it, when we'd come back separately, we were on the same page, and we'd be recording the same album. So, you know, in the end, Oz and I would, you know, I forget who has what mixes on the album, but we just sort of decided, because, you know, if a song had been mixed 6 times, I might have mixed it 2 to 4 times, and sort of same for Oz. So, and it was like a progression. Tom would come in and say, okay, pop quiz. He'd call it a pop quiz. He'd say, I like this about mix 3, and I like this about mix 5. This was kind of a miss on mix 4. Go. I'll be back in 20 minutes. And, you know, you'd have to get a mix together.
Cut it together. You didn't cut them together? You didn't cut them on tape?
Very rarely. He just wanted to do it again. He just wanted to, like, that's the same thing when we were recording songs. If he wasn't feeling it, it was just like, he'd get up from the piano and he may continue the same song, but he goes play it on guitar, you know? And like Get Behind the Mule on the record was kind of a forgotten song, because we tried it a couple other times after the first one that we recorded with Stephen Hodges. And I could just kind of see that Tom was he was getting frustrated with the feeling of not capturing the song. And I don't know, but a month or so into the album, I was just like, can we listen to this one? You know, this first one? And that's the one, you know, it's like kind of, and with not Black Market Baby. Oh, Filipino Box Spring Hog. That had been recorded a bunch of times for other records. And I could feel that it was going by the wayside again. And we were on a break for a movie he was filming. And I said, hey, can I take this home with me and like chop it up in Pro Tools and play with it a little bit? And so that's the one song that was mixed. Actually, I did it in Logic. That's the one song that was mixed off of the computer through the Neve desk. But I was going to say something, and I forgot what the point I was going to make. Oh, the engineering. Like one day he kind of came in on me when I was doing a pop quiz mix, and I could tell he was into the way it sounded. So we just kind of sat there and listened, and I just observed him listening and like kind of trying to gauge like, well, was he into this or not? And then I reached up to change a setting on the distressor, and he said, Jacquire, stop engineering. He told me to like, you're done. You're done. You know, it's just like, you did your thing. That's the way it feels. You're done. Stop engineering. So
Great
it
advice.
kind of taught me to stop tinkering. Long answer, but yeah, that's, you know, you just, like we were talking before, we shouldn't think too much about, we know what we're doing enough that we just need to feel our way through it. And when when a mix stops giving me little signals that something needs to be addressed, it's like, okay, I'm gonna let somebody else listen to it.
Yeah, that's the old the artist picks the rough mix, you know, over the mix that you know is perfect, and then the record goes on and sells 5 million records. So
it took me a long time to listen to the little voice in the back of my head when it was like, you know what, stop dicking with this, or I got to get this out, I got to get this out, and I got to get this out. And the little voice in the back of my head was like, this isn't right, don't send it. Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one too, because I know, I mean, I know how I work. I know how everybody else does. You know, like I have X amount of time every day to work, and then I have the weekends, and then I have X amount of time every day. And it's like, you know, once one thing starts slipping, then, you know, there's a little bit of a house of cards sometimes in your schedule. And it's tough sometimes to just be like, okay, hold it. This is not right. I've got to come in on Saturday and do this.
Yep.
I gotta, you know, I'm in the middle of a whole nother record, and now I have to, you know, close that mix, recall another mix for another record. I had to do that last week, and it, you know, it's just, you just sometimes have to suck it up. Earlier, the thing that Jacquire was talking about, I was saying that, you know, a lot of times I hate everything that I do. I hate it. I think it's terrible. And it's that imposter syndrome thing, you know. I was saying that I'd love to have somebody else mix stuff of mine, but I'm afraid to send it to people because they'll be like, oh, that was bullshit. It sucks.
But,
you know,
I'm sure you found this. I just did a record recently where I deliberately screwed myself tracking. You know, we had a big drum kit set up in the middle of the room, and it was this nice big rock kit, and it just didn't feel right. And there was an old Ludwig over in the corner, and I just grabbed 3 mics, threw them on the Ludwig, and we're like, let's go. The drummer started vibing. It was great. I didn't really have time to tweak anything. We just cut it. Felt great. But when I went to mix it, I was like, oh, I really screwed myself. And I agonized over that and agonized over it. And when I sent it to the band and the producer, they were like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. And I was like, yeah. Sometimes you just overthink it.
Yeah.
It's really easy to do it.
I mean, I find that when there's a little struggle in it, the outcome is better.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd rather mix quickly and intuitively, as quickly as I can, obviously paying attention to the voice that says, hey, this is not right. But just do it as quickly as possible, because 9 times out of 10, it's you know, it's on enough that people can comment. You know, sometimes they say they love it. Sometimes they send back a volume of notes. But you know, it's a place to start. And if I spent the extra time to make sure that I felt like it was all perfect, then I just waste a bunch of time. Yeah. Because I'd overthink it. I'd probably mess up something that was probably okay and good, better than where I put it, and just kind of live that way and get to the place where you can share it with the artist, and then they can comment on it.
Hey Vance, what did you do with the 7 pages of notes you got on that one record last week? Did you burn them
away?
All right. Hey, speaking of pop, you mentioned pop quiz. Let's just do a sprint. There's a couple of questions that we could just sprint through. So,
sure.
Like for everybody in the room, here's a question that comes up a lot. I never know how to answer this, but I might as well throw it out. If a song was mixed in both Luna and Pro Tools with UAD plugins by the same mixer, would you be able to hear a difference?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm looking to buy a pair. Yeah, go.
Because there's no way you can copy what you're doing twice. So it would be different because the time frame is different. Now, if there was some way you could exactly get the balance, I mean, you know, it'd just be really hard to do that. Do they sound different? They do. Yeah. But it's more of a, it's not an A/B test. It's more like an A orange test.
Well, my answer was based on the two DAWs sound different. I think Luna sounds much better. It's also easier to get to a good result. Pro Tools, you just got to work hard in it. But I like the point that Vance is making. It's just like you're mixing them at two separate times, so they're going to be a little different. It's not apples to apples.
Right.
You know, this argument is as old as time, and I'm curious, like, at this point, taking, let's say, Vance, you've got 16 tracks of well-recorded audio, Jacquire, whatever, 16 tracks of floating bit, summed down. How much different can it sound? Gain staging is one thing that changes, you know, different kinds of plugins and how they're written and whatever the engine is. But, you know, just straight floating point mixing, what changes, do you think? Or do you know?
I think if you were to take and put the files in Luna, put everything at 0, pan everything exactly the same, right? With whatever plugins, exactly the same in both sessions, and then print a mix, and then do the same exact thing in Pro Tools, exactly the same, they probably would not null because of the math being different.
Hmm.
And it's not that the math is different, it's that they're going about it, I think, a different way. I think Luna is looking at things differently. So is it better? Is it, you know, I mean, there's, you know, Luna is going to be a very powerful DAW for people, I would say like me, actually, that use Pro Tools more like a tape machine than as a mixer initially. At some point, Luna will be able to handle control surfaces. There'll be, trim. There'll be things in the, in the automation that'll be better. But it's really pretty fucking easy to put a mix together in. And I know that sounds weird, but it's
easy.
Really pretty fucking easy. So
I do. I think because I've been mixing it a lot lately, I think I do no more than 60% of the work in Luna that I would do in Pro Tools. Just in terms of like plugins and just sort of parallel compression, just trying to get things to glue together. It just happens way faster.
Interesting. Well, and you know what? You gotta give credence to that. You mess around with this stuff for a long time, you just kind of get a feel. You get a feel that how things are working. So I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, we're not blasting through stuff. What's another question?
One guy said, I need to buy ribbon mics. Should I get a pair of Coles or an AEA R88?
Either one is fantastic. My 2 cents, the R88 is a more versatile mic than 240-38s, but but for different reasons. 240-38s are fucking awesome. Period. Yeah. The R88 is kind of this awesome mic that'll do overheads, it'll do room mics, it'll do acoustic guitar. Put an R88 sideways in left right on the strings as the guy's playing like this. Beautiful guitar sound and perfect in mono. It is really an amazing microphone. But 40-38s, that's a fucking deal. So both.
I mean, yeah, piano's great on a R88 too. I mean, For me, I guess I'd probably the R88 is just like one mic. Like if you want if you want to actually use the Colt, depending on what your situation is and the kind of investment you can make, I mean, maybe having 2 separate mics would be better.
Yeah. I mean, I've used the 40-38 in that sort of half Glenn Johns thing, the thing that I call, one above and one over, but then not one out front. I'll put a mic on the kick drum. And it's fucking awesome. But 90% of the time, I just put a single R88 over the back of the drummer's head like this, and done. Overheads. Perfect. Easy.
I love Coles spaced in front of a drum kit as room mics, as close room mics. I love that.
Yep.
I put the one. I like that too. I always put mine really low, maybe like.
So do I, right above the ground. Yep.
Yeah.
The front mic, the old front mic.
Jacquire, favorite keyboards over the years?
Probably the Juno 106 and then the 60 probably, and then a mini Moog.
Yeah.
You know, those would be, and then I guess if we're kind of trying to come up with a Mount Rushmore out of 4th, I'd probably add a Prophet.
Mm.
Yeah. 5.
Yeah, Prophet 5.
Well, those are synthy. I mean, keyboard, like if we're talking like keyboards in general, I mean, I also, you know, like Wurlitzer, you know, you can't. I have this really cool little Help and Steel piano. You know, there's all. I like, you know, and actually even a Casio. What is it? SK1? Is that the one that samples?
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. We use that on. You know, I love that too because you can sample like with that. We've sampled like some piano notes or like a piano and played it back on like a single note or like an like a B3 type of sound and played it back through that. It's just like it's instant coolness lo-fi, you know.
Mitch has got one that has been circuit bent, so it's got all the little extra switches on it. It's pretty cool.
That's
very, 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 very cool.
I like the new Mellotron. I think that thing is an incredible array of sounds that are really inspirational.
Yeah, Mitch and I went in together and bought the big one with the weighted keys. Really, really nice. I mean, to me, man, the sub fatty or the little fatty is fucking hard to beat as a scent. You know, I mean, B3 is hard to beat. Word, you know, Wurlitzer, Rhodes.
What about you, Reid?
All those things.
Do you have one that we didn't say?
Well, the Mellotron. I also found that the what was it? The Access Virus TI or something, the white one.
Oh yeah, that plugin.
Always had some. No, it's an actual keyboard.
It is.
It always had some amazing sounds in it.
Yeah,
I was a huge fan of Jupiters. I love Jupiters.
Yeah, they're expensive these days. By the way, does everybody know about the worst website on the planet? I'm gonna type it in here, and then you guys can go and check it out. I want you to know that this website here
don't go there.
Cost my friends so much money.
Yeah,
I have an email from Jack White where he literally said, "Fuck you, asshole, for giving me this website.
Yeah,
I've spent so much money."
So
much. Tony over there, man, oh man.
Yes, they're very.
Have
they're
you been
very
there?
proud of their restorations. You know, but the stuff that they do is really high quality.
Where I missed it. What is
Soundgas.com.
Oh, okay.
Soundgas.com.
Sorry. Or as Josh Thomas likes to say, I love you, you're welcome, and I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah. I sent Josh Thomas that same link, and he wrote me back and he said, I don't know why you sent me this. Yeah. Please don't ever send me links like
horrible.
This.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
All right. Modern microphones. Are there some modern mics you'd like to talk about?
Well, we talked about the R88. That's probably one of the most special ones. I mean, honestly, I'm thinking about like what I use for recording, and that's probably one of the only ones that's a modern. Oh, actually, though, no, I shouldn't say that. The Mojave MA200, I love a lot. It's great.
That's a pretty cool mic. That's a good mic. Have you tried the 1000?
I don't love it as much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I got to be honest with you, man. My thing lately, the Chandler Red, I got one of those. I got serial number 8, sorry. And then I immediately just wrote back to Wade and said, man, I need another one. And so he sent me another one. And man, that thing is just fucking amazing. You know, amazing. I love C30. I love C37As, by the way.
We all need those.
Go ahead. The C37P is awesome.
Yeah, but that's an old mic.
It's an old mic.
Yeah.
Have you heard the new C37s? That
I haven't. Are they any good?
I got a set. They sounded really good, but then they were immediately like, "Oh no, we screwed something up. Send them back." So we sent them back. I haven't got them back yet. But Joe is really, really big on making Joe Ciccarelli about having.
Didn't he consult somebody? He's a
partner and all that. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's
I mean,
really
I have
cool.
I have a C37A. It's one of my all-time favorite mics.
Yeah, I have a
I had a
P, and I love that.
I had a C37A until my old assistant Buckley stole it and won't give it back. Bastard.
Superbuck stole your mic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, he's stolen a couple of things. Yeah, Superbuck got my shit. All right, favorite snare drum?
Ludwig Acrolite.
Yeah, it's a good one. I have a Sugar percussion snare that's just fucking awesome. And then I have a 1947 Leedy that is off the charts.
I just got a 20s. Yeah, go ahead, Reid.
I was gonna say I have an A&F, one of the first A&F snare drums that every time we're on a session ends up being picked more often than not.
I was gonna say about 4 months ago, I bought I went to I'm drawing a blank on it. What's the drum shop in town? The great one.
Forks, Nelson.
Forks?
No, not Forks. Yeah, Nelson. Yeah. I went in there to buy a 1964 Ludwig Club Date, little white kit, because I've wanted one of those for a long time, and ended up buying a 20s 6-lug brass snare drum. It's the poor man's Black Beauty. That thing is amazing. The head on it, it's got to be 30, 40 years old. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I bought my Leedy kit from Reunion out in Portland. You ever been there? Amazing. It's a 47 gold sparkle. It had calfskin, split lug calfskin heads on the toms. It was really awesome. And then the snare has the cast, the heavy die cast, nickel, like stick cutters. It's fucking amazing.
Did you leave the heads on there? The casting heads on?
No, I didn't. I have them, but I didn't leave them on. I put regular heads on. But yeah, it's amazing. So,
question for you guys: do you like emperors or ambassadors more?
Emperors. No, coated ambassadors.
Coated ambassadors are awesome, but to be honest with you, I kind of wallow around in either ambassadors or pinstripes, because I kind of love that. I kind of love that classic pinstripe tuned up high tom sound, and you can do that with ambassadors for sure, but man, they sound really nice with a pinstripe, clear pinstripe. But then, I've got what are they? The Evans makes the vintage tone. It's almost like a calfskin. So I have some of those too. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, those are cool. You?
I used to be lean more ambassador, now more emperor. I like coated. Yeah.
I love the.
But I also like a power stroke on a kick and a snare.
Yeah.
All right, let's change gears. Here's a funny question, Jacquire. Why are you so calm all the time? My question too.
CDB type of consumption. No, I mean, because I don't know. I have a bad temper, really, but it's kind of like an ugly part of my personality that I've just worked really hard to, kind of eliminate. And I've realized I'm a happier person and get better results with people. I wasn't like yelling and screaming at everybody, but I have a pretty intense personality, and I just have worked really hard to be calm. And just, it's just like, I feel like, meditative and Zen-like is a better state of being and happiness for me, because I'm a worrier thinker, there's a lot going on inside. That's like, there's a lot of turmoil inside. So it's my way of calming myself and just being a reassuring, even presence for others.
I mean, you did make 4 Kings of Leon records. I mean, that alone is pretty, you know.
Well, we fought. And,
Oh, I know. I heard. But I mean, that
I'm not afraid to go toe to toe with somebody.
I've heard some great stories. We won't go into them, but I've heard some great stories.
Well, you can go into them if you want, Jacquire. You know, you might want to talk a little bit about what happens when you're in the studio and there is conflict, and you know how you deal with that.
Well, it depends on the conflict and who's having the conflict. I mean, a couple of times with the Kings, we had to just call the session and send everybody home. You know, let's say let's stop here before it gets out of control, and somebody needs to sober up. And but you know, it depends on the dynamic. You know, I had an instance where the lead singer in the band was in the control room with me, and the lead guitar player was having a tough time kind of getting apart. And so the lead singer's like over the talk back berating him. And it's just like, I'd kind of just had enough of it, because I could see that it wasn't being helpful for the guy on the floor. It was just making the situation worse. And it's just like, that's not the kind of environment I wanted to be in terms of communication. So I kind of blew up and let the singer have it. And just sort of told him, is like, that's not the way to lead. You're not going to get the best out of that guy. What you really want is you want the best performance out of him. So maybe you need to go out there and have a serious conversation with him, but the way that you're handling this is all wrong. You're making him feel bad. You're making me feel bad. You look like an idiot, and this is not helping anything. So, grow up. So it just really depends on the situation. I mean, as a producer, sort of the in-between person, the translator of the performance and the art to the medium, it's like you're always in the middle. So you have to be a conduit of communication and knowing when to separate people. So it's just all situational, but you can't be afraid of communication and confrontation, because if you are, then it all just gets kind of weird and it deteriorates the greater purpose. I mean, what we do is so friggin' intense, because everybody's hopes and dreams and expectations, they're just all right there. And typically it takes a long time to get to the place where you're ready to make an album. And then it's like everybody's hopes and dreams. We have the luxury of repeating it. So the process, but like a great band might make 6 albums total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of opportunity to be in the studio and make something great. So you just have to, just try to just take it case by case.
That's a good answer.
I can tell you that I know for me, animals can smell fear, and so can guitar players and singers, especially singers. I have a couple of instances in my back catalog where I should have been the guy, taking the singer out back and giving him the what for, and basically just, taking him to the woodshed, let's put it that way. And I tried to be friendly and stay friends and, be the mediator. And that wasn't actually what needed to happen. I mean,
why do you think they would have respected you more if you had just like cut it off?
I think that there was a member of the band that was basically, browbeating everybody and, had been whipping everybody, and the band was looking to me probably to just tell him to fuck himself. And I should have just literally dragged him outside and, gone at it in the parking lot, because he was just being a dick. But I didn't. And that changed everything for the rest of the time we were together. I regret it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a guy who likes to get violent at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm a 0 to 100. I'm a 0 to 5 for about 3 hours, and then 5 to 100 in about 4 seconds. And when I'm going 100, I don't stop. There's no breaks. So it's not a good thing. I'm not anything I'm proud of. But so but so what?
With groups of people and bands, it's like there's always a hierarchy and a way of communication. I always make an effort early on to ask the ones that are sort of not the alpha, at the bottom of the totem pole. I always make it and especially in front of the alpha, I always make it a point to engage that person and ask them what they think and make sure that I have a conversation in front of everybody. So I'm sending the signal to the alpha and everybody else. It's like, this person's opinion and thoughts on this matter. They're part of the group. And so I want to hear from them. We're going to have, and we're going to have a conversation about what they think, and begin to build a situation where, like, hey, we're communicating. Everybody has a voice in this. And I don't want to just hear from this as one person without telling that one person, like, be quiet. Hopefully they kind of clue into the fact that, hey, this is a group environment.
Yeah.
And I always try to do that early.
Aren't people bringing you in as the alpha?
Well, sort of, sure. Yeah. I mean, and I it's like you feel that role when you walk into a room and you're the record producer and you definitely feel that room because, yeah, that's your job. You're the leader. You're the one that's bringing it all together and you're focusing it. But, it's not a situation where I have to show my dominance. I just, I am an alpha in the situation, but I'm not the only alpha. Because the artist or one of the artists in the group of artists that you're working with is typically an alpha. And so you are making someone else's, you're making someone else's artistic expression. So they have to have a strong opinion. I don't want to make a record with someone that doesn't know what they want. I wish I could do that.
Amen. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with bands because, you really are. I mean, the producer's job really is to be in charge of the project and to make sure the project happens. But sometimes, I don't know. Like I said, I've let one get away from me, just one, and that taught me a lot. It did. It definitely taught me a lot.
What do you do? What do you do, Reid? With how do you set the tone for things?
Well, I learned way back in the day as an assistant. I was in a session with a big producer, and he turned around and he said, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, I don't think it's my job to have an opinion about that." And he was like, "It's your job to have an opinion when I fucking ask your opinion."
Sure.
And that made me realize that when you're in the room and you're in the room for a reason, you should have your opinion. Kissing somebody's ass or just saying, "I don't know, what do you think?" Or yes, yes, Mr. Superstar. Yeah, that'll be great. That makes you useless to them. It makes you useless to you. And it certainly makes you useless to the art. So I don't ever want to hurt people's feelings, but if somebody asks me a question, they get an honest answer. And I think that people know when they ask a question, they are going to get an honest answer. If we're in a room with people who don't want honesty and they just want their ass kissed, I am probably the wrong guy in that room.
I had a great experience once working with Jewel. Now, you guys ever worked with her? Jewel, she's really talented in a lot of ways. Yes. But strangely, the first take she sings is always the best one. It's always the best. She's just fucking awesome. But she can't let it be. So we were working on a record, Sans producer. He wasn't in the room. And we were, 60 takes into a chorus. And she asked me what I thought. And I just told her, I said, I got to be honest with you, Jewel, you're asking me a question above my pay grade. And she's like, "Well, I don't give a shit about that. Tell me what you think." And I said, "The first take you did was great. Just play it for me." So I played it. And then I played it and then I hit stop. And she goes, "Can you make a really great one from that one?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." She goes, "Good." And got up and was done. She really just wanted somebody to say, "This is the right take.
Yep.
You got it." And you know, and I mean, me saying it's above my pay grade, you know, I tell people a lot of times when I have these, like the Blackbird kids here, you know, I have these little 3 rules, and one of them is to keep your fucking mouth shut. That's the last one. Don't say anything, except unless someone asks your opinion, and then be prepared to give it, regardless of the consequences.
Be honest.
Be honest.
So if the artist says, "What do you think of the song?" and you go, "I really love it," even though you hate it, they're gonna know you're lying. They're gonna know because you're lying.
You know,
But if you say, "Man, I really dig it," I think maybe the first take was better, or whatever, they're gonna appreciate it. Now, it may cost you your gig.
yeah.
You know,
It doesn't always work. I remember very distinctly,
It
I did a
doesn't.
mix one time, and rarely this happens. I was really happy with it. I was like, I nailed this mix. Producer walked in, listened to it once, and he was like, "You nailed it." I was like, "Great," because that never happens either, right?
right? No.
The artist listened to it, and we were there until 3:30 in the morning tweaking stuff. And at one point, I think it was the artist, it was either the artist or producer, you know, turned to me and said, "So, hey man, what do you think?" And I was like, "You know what? I think it's 3:30 in the morning. I think this mix kicked ass 8 hours ago. I think we fucked around for 8 hours and haven't done anything productive. And I think that you don't care what I think."
Exactly.
And they got super pissed and they walked out. And 3 days later, they called and said, "Hey, you know that first mix you did?
Can we have that?
Yep.
So, you know, win some, you lose some." But
Well, the thing is like, you know, honesty is the best policy. And, you know, I've gotten fired, you know, it's just like someone
It's a
didn't
badge
choose
of
my
honor. Getting
Yeah,
fired is a badge of honor.
Well, the thing is,
What's your thing, Reid?
if
gotta
you're
be
not
prepared.
Trying hard enough. Right?
if you're not getting fired occasionally, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. So you might as well get used to it. You might, you know, it's just like, that's part of it.
You know, I got fired. There's a band here in town. I got fired. I got fired from a mix. It was a terrible song for a terrible one of those like inspired by records. You know, music inspired by, you know, Frozen or some bullshit. Yeah, I don't know what it was. you know what I mean? It was a stupid record. And this is a true story. I was at the basement watching a band, and one of the guys in another band, a completely other band, asked me what I was doing. I was like, "Oh, I'm mixing this stupid fucking song for blah blah blah." And come Monday morning, I basically got called on the carpet about it. And the band's manager called me and I said, "Yeah, it's a stupid fucking song." You know, it was. And I told my friend, who obviously told you. So, yeah, it's a stupid song. And I got my ass fired. And you know what's interesting? That song never came out. And you know why? Because it was a stupid fucking song. Never came out. But, I mean, it's kind of one of those things like, you know, if you're not honest, you know. Now, the band never asked me what I thought. If they would, I would have said.
You go, and then I got to relate something.
I just see something that I was thinking about earlier. It says, you know, Vance and Jacquire, something about our live mixing experience, like our live experience. Yeah, that also teaches you to be like priorities, be fast, performance counts, and to be decisive. I mean, because sometimes, I mean, I worked in the same clubs and theaters for years, and sometimes the mix just sounded killing. It was awesome. It was so easy. And then same gear, same stage, same, you know, everything. Next night it was terrible. It was like, and for a while I'd be like, what am I doing wrong? It's like, well, it's not me. It's what's going on the stage.
Right.
You know, it's just like, well, maybe the amps are too loud, or, you know, maybe one guy's too loud, or it's just kind of messy. They're not a tight band or whatever.
Yeah.
So it definitely taught me a lot. I mean, that's what I would say.
The live sound thing, I can tell you that I got to spend 8.5 years working with Jack every day. And the only reason I did that is because I was fast. He doesn't want people. He didn't want people to tell you. The first thing is he doesn't want anybody to say, "I can't do that." that is not in the realm. It is,
Yep.
yes, we'll do it. Is it the best sounding thing that ever happened? Maybe not, but we did it and it's done. You know, I mean, I cut a 14-piece band for Wanda Jackson on 8 tracks. Now, in one room, 120 by 24 room, and with him playing electric guitar. So, and left one track open for vocal. So that's a tall task. And most people have been like, no, fuck no, you can't do that. We did it. And, you know, is it my favorite sounding record ever? Technically, no, but man, it fucking has a lot of vibe.
It feels like something. It goes back to Reid's earlier story about the big rock kit and then going to the little Ludwig in the corner. It's just like,
yeah.
What makes a great record, what makes a record sound great is because it's got a great vibe. A great sound does not make a record have a vibe, you know? Yeah. So it's like some of the best sounding, most hi-fi music is the most boring to listen to because it is really, the substance isn't there. It's really about the sound of it and the presentation of it. So like a performance makes things sound good. Like makes mediocre sounds, or that, you know, that Wanda Jackson, it sounds great because it's compelling. There's a compelling performance. Right. There's a moment happening, and that's, you know, and then if it moves people and they hear it a lot, then that's what sounds great. Like, oh yeah, that's a great sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Feels good. Great. Sounds good.
Feels good. It is good. All right, see what we got. Let's see questions here.
We got to answer that top question. It's been upvoted so much.
What's that?
The vocal ambience.
Yeah, it says
the vocal. Go ahead.
Go. You call it, man.
You got it. Damn it! I just put it away. The vocal ambience on Norah Jones' "The Fall" is perfect. What was your thought process when putting these effects together? Was it the room, or was it more both?
You know, most of the time it wasn't really about room ambience, you know, in terms of like what I was capturing. It wasn't like a Tom Waits thing where I was purposely capturing room tone. Right. No, you know, Norah had this at her studio where we spent maybe the first week kind of preparing. She had this Ibanez delay, those analog delays that we love, you know, she had one of those, and she's just like in love with it and fixated on it. So she just wanted it on everything. So I didn't actually, in the end, use it on everything, but I really took it as a strong indicator of where her head was at.
Did you capture it just on a track somewhere?
Sometimes, but we didn't really do much of. I think we only recorded one song at her actual studio at her place, which was I can't remember the title of the song at the moment. But it's a solo piano vocal thing. I used kind of the usual suspects on it. She has an Elam 250 mic, and I put a copper what are those? What's the copper mic called? It's a
copper phone.
Copper phone. Thank you. I was thinking copper tone, like that's sun tanning oil. The copper phone. I put that next to the 250 to kind of capture some very mid-rangey, texture to her voice, and I just kind of blend that in a little bit. I put a lot of compression on it. It's a little bit of that Ibanez type of delay. Sometimes it's the Ibanez. It's a plate reverb and maybe a hall or a chamber sound.
Where did you mix that?
She's just an extraordinary singer. In my basement at my old house.
That's right. The old house, yeah.
Yeah. And it's mixed in Pro Tools with a hybrid setup. I mixed the Kings of Leon Only by the Night there too, and a bunch of records. I mean, I mixed a bunch of great stuff there. Yeah. And so nothing super specific other than what I shared. She's just. I mean, we sang like Chasing Pirates. I remember we recorded that song with 3 different rhythm sections. So I had her sing some vocal takes. I like to do vocal takes at the end of the day when we were recording. I had her go out and sing. I was like, hey, can we do some vocals on this song? And she went out, she sang 2 passes. I told her after the first one, it sounds amazing. Let's just go again, just because, that was great. Let's just see what happens if we go again. sang the second one, and I said, well, Nora, I love that second one a little bit better than the first. She's like, yeah, me too. That was it, done.
Yeah.
You know,
Great singer, amazing
it's
singer.
an incredible privilege to be able to work with someone who's, there's some people who are just trying to be the rock star sometimes, and there's people who are trying to get the greatest product. And it takes a lot of humility for a rock star to admit that they need to do better to get the greatest product, And that was the story I wanted to tell from earlier. I got a chance years ago to work with Lily White. And so, of course, we started wearing him out on U2 stories. And he told a story that was really interesting. He said, I think it was Atomic Bomb. They were over at Abbey Road, and they had done all these songs with all these strings and London Symphony Orchestra and whatever. And they grabbed a hold of, what's his face? Vance. He produced that band, the Beatles.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Emmerich.
No, not recorded.
No.
Martin.
Oh,
that guy.
Yeah.
And he said, come in, listen to some stuff. And he played him like 3 or 4 songs with all this stuff on it. And then, looked at him and what did he think? He said, Peter Martin looked at him and said, well, that's shit, isn't it? And he said Bono's mouth just kind of dropped open, and they scrapped all of that and recut the record in like a week. And that's most of what ended up on the record. And wow. I thought it was amazing because at that point, arguably these guys are the biggest band in the world. They don't have to listen to anyone. And he was listening. I mean, it's hard not to listen to George Martin, but he was willing to throw away everything he had put into that to make it better. And they did. I thought that was incredible.
That is incredible.
I always, U2 is one of those bands, I graduated in 1982. I mean, it's hard not to say that, that was like the sort of the band of the 80s for me. I mean, I loved U2. And I've always had, there's certain bands I've always, I'm not a huge McCartney solo fan, but I'd love to record Paul McCartney, And so I had all these these people I wanted to record. And U2 is one of them. And I actually got to a chance to record them, and I couldn't. I'll just tell this little story. It says not good anything. But it's a good story, right, Reid?
Yes, it is.
On Memorial Day 2 years ago, I was at my grill with my little grilling apron on, my wet shorts because I'd been in the pool, a black T-shirt, some sort of stupid cowboy hat I had on, and I'm grilling. I'm about 11 beers into a 12-pack, grilling hot dogs, and I get a call to come to Third Man and record U2. And I actually had to say, I can't because I'm too drunk. And that is my U2 story. Man, I really, really wish that they would just, give a Lily White in a room or get, just go in a room and just make a record and try to stop making the biggest record in the world.
I wish they'd do that with you, Vance.
Yeah, me too.
I would love that. So Bono, hit me up.
Bono.
And Edge, I'll just call me, come to Sputnik.
And if Vance is too drunk, I will be his stand-in.
Me too. I will happily.
I would be happy to do that. So
hey, Jacquire, this one says you've been a big influence for a lot of mixing engineers. Who would you say influenced you?
Well, I think. Someone specifically. I mean, Brendan O'Brien kind of comes to my mind first, just because he made a lot of the records in the 90s, a lot of records in the 90s that I really love.
Dogman.
And so when I was kind of trying to get my rock and roll mixing chops together, I would reference some of the records, like the Chili Peppers or Rage Against the Machine, and just. I just love the vibe of his mixes, and he's somebody that mixes super fast, by the way. He's probably the one person that I could really point to. Otherwise, I guess, I mean, I've studied so much music. And record making. I would say Tom Dowd is another one for me, but maybe not. You know, mixing. I think it's just. I mean, I'm very inspired and informed by what you guys do too. You know, and always have been.
Well,
no, I mean, I truly mean that. I truly mean that. And I guess Chad Blake would be the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's disturbingly good.
He's really, really good, and a really, really nice man.
I've heard that.
Really, really
very
nice.
Very nice guy.
Andy Wallace, amazing. I know for me, you know, my first engineer boner was Claire Mountain. I loved all those records through the 80s and 90s.
Me too.
You know, Crowded House, Simple Minds, Pretenders, all those records where, you know, I was, you know, trying to figure out how fucking things sounded like they did, you know, and all of those were Clear Mountain. And he's such a sweet guy and just, you know, fuck.
What was it? Oh, the Robbie Robertson record that he did.
Yes. Yes.
That was big.
No, that's not the Lanois one though, is it?
No. Is it?
No.
Yep.
Ah. So Lanois produced it and Bob.
That starts with Night Parade. It is Lanois.
Okay.
Gabriel playing keys and singing background vocals.
Yeah.
It was essentially, that record was made, I believe, right in between Joshua Tree and So, which is just
Kevin Killen
when you think about it.
Kevin Killen.
Kevin Killen.
Like, Peter Gabriel's So record still kicks my ass.
Have you seen the making of So? Have you seen that classic albums thing?
No.
Dude, you've got to find it. It is a fucking mind fucker. They recorded it. They recorded it on an A80. Now, some of us are old enough to know what an A80 is. They recorded it on 2 A80s. And they when they went to sync them together, which was fine, they made a sync, but then they went back. The clocks on the two machines didn't work. So they had to literally put the record together bar by bar to get it onto a 3348 to mix the record.
The slightly more pained than usual expression you see on my face right now is the fact that I went through that on a record with a guy named Owsley who insisted on using his A80, and then he was slaving stuff and coming back. And then we discovered that as he slaved it and came back, things were around a quarter step off.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what happens in this record.
Oh.
And they did hundreds of takes and then cut single bars out of all these takes and pieced them all together to make. I mean, it is a mind-blowing concept.
Well, that goes back to our earlier point. That goes back to our earlier point of, you know, the struggle can make something great. And correct me if I'm wrong, Reid, but didn't you win a Grammy for that Owsley record? Isn't there an engineer? Wasn't there an engineering Grammy for an Owsley record?
That was the earlier one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was JR did. And well deserved. I thought that kicked ass. And to be honest, maybe my favorite Tom Lord Alge mix ever is on that record, a song called "I'm All Right." You know,
I love Tom's mixes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Tom's a badass. Also, shout out to Bob Power, man. Some of the stuff that he did in East Coast.
Hell yeah. I mean, it can go on and on. Yeah, I mean, I'm influenced by everybody, really. You know?
Right. That's a great point. Like, if I hear something that's awesome, I'm influenced by it, right?
I'm gonna try to figure out how to like do my version of it. You know.
You know what I heard the other day, and if I'm wrong, please somebody tell me I'm wrong. But I read that Chad Blake mixed songs from The Big Chair.
Really?
Which is that's Tears for Fears, Shout, and Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And then when I hear those records, I go, oh, that makes sense. So now he may have been the engineer on it, he may have been the mixer, but he was somehow involved in that record. And that was
somebody track down Chad and ask him that, because that record was Watershed.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
well, I'll I'll text him later and ask him.
Yeah, find out. That'd be really cool to know.
I had no
stuck
idea.
on that Los Lobos record that he did, man. I
Yeah,
can't
Kiko.
pass
Kiko.
that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ridiculous.
One of my favorites.
Here, text him. Tell him he needs to come between the beards.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
I will.
Come on between I should be careful how I phrase that.
Yeah.
Hey, I have to go in probably 15 minutes because I got to I gotta be somewhere.
You actually have to work?
Yeah, because
you have to do something.
Well, I kind of screwed up this morning. And missed a podcast episode that I'm supposed to be on. So
there you go.
So we're doing it this afternoon. It's cool. It's kind of a cool thing. Well, I won't talk about it. I'll leave it for another time.
You can talk about it if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
don't care.
We're just okay. So, my friend Matt Janella, who's in the golf world, he started a podcast, and it's kind of a storytelling podcast. Joe Horowitz, who's a mutual friend, who's he was a professional golfer. He's also a great musician. Kind of wrote this little song, this unfinished song there's a couple lines from it that have become part of the theme for Matt's podcast. And so what we decided to do is to document the whole process of taking the unfinished song, because it's just really a couple lines that Matt's using for the as a theme with some of the guitar playing, and actually turn it into a fully realized song. So we're getting together over all the several installments to document our conversation around, finishing the song into a.
You want to shout out the podcast? What it is?
It's called The Fire Pit with Matt Janella.
Cool.
And yeah, he just did it. The most recent one was with Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, Matt's mostly in the golf world, but he's interviewed Ken Griffey Jr., who has 12 Golden Gloves. I mean, I know you guys.
Yeah, no,
may not be
amazing.
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It just needs storytelling stuff, and so it kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me.
I always forget to ask this because we spend all day sitting in studios. But can you, and I'm going to ask a few questions as we do this, like what is your monitor speaker setup? But can you just show us real quick? You're sitting in your studio, right?
Yeah.
Give us a quick little tour.
Okay. Well, there's the desk I'm sitting at. I've got my Amphions, my 218s with the bass system, my little old JBL computer speakers. I took my Pro-Ax down. I took my Pro-Ax down. They were not working as well in this room because of the size of the room and the proximity. The proximity here. I'll take the leash off. The room is not that big. It's I'm sort of like a 14 or 15 by 15 kind of room, and so they weren't working well in here where I have to place them. And those are the Gen 4 Rocket 5s.
Yep.
Which I really like. What's that?
You've had those for a long time. Like you've been on Rockets for a long time, right?
Yeah, I really love the first generation, and then I helped Rich Rankin kind of. I was one of the people that kind of consulted him on getting something that was sent back to what was good about the first generation. Right. And then my little Quad 8 console.
Oratone.
Oratone, yeah, on Oratone. I use that. That's one of my mono checks.
Yep.
Check in mono, and then my studio is in a house that I converted into a studio. I don't live here, but so we go out in the hallway.
Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful kitchen.
Kitchen hangout area. My
drum room.
Then over here, upstairs is like my office and a lounge and other stuff, and then the live room is,
which is not as live as your kitchen.
It's not, and we but what's so awesome is that this door, we just pop this door open and we drag mics out there, and sometimes I put a mic on the stairs for drum ambience, and then so the room's not that big, and then there's a vocal booth. Booth in here, and this used to be a bathroom.
Did you leave the toilet in there? No.
I did. No, I did not leave the singer of the throne. And that's that's a little bit of the studio tour.
Very cool.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well, then also sort of like we also sort of have a B room, if you will. There's I think Dawson's out here.
Oh,
Say hi, Dawson.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So the garage is kind of like where we have a second Pro Tools rig, and can do some editing and stuff out there.
Very cool. Yeah, whole house. It's really wicked.
Jacquire Studio is like 2.5 miles from my house. It's just right down the road.
It is.
Yep.
We don't see enough of each other, though.
We don't. It's a bummer. We talk about it all the time, but then we kind of just end up,
working or doing.
Yeah, we work all day during the week, and then the weekend comes, and
And
I
you
know
don't
for
play
me,
golf.
I don't play golf. I don't. So
and that's what I try to do that on the weekends a little bit.
So hey, there's one last question that's up at the top. I don't really understand it, so I'm just going to read it. Question about Jacquire's mixing level. Could you explain why you reduced the level of VUMT by 9 dB? Isn't that
I get this,
low?
I get this a lot. It's just I reduced the meter is not it's on a send. It's not in line with the audio. So I'm not turning the audio down 9 dB. I'm turning the VU reference level down to where it's in a usable range, because if you look at what we print as digital level these days, what our level is on a VU, it's like the VU's slammed. I mean, when I mix on my desk, the stereo VUs are like pinned the whole time.
Yeah.
So I bring it down 9 dB because generally how hot I print a mix, which is 14 to 12 LUFS. That's what puts that VU in a usable range to where I can actually see a little if I want to look at it.
So it's just scaling. It's just scaling. You can see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. It has nothing to do with actually what the level is. It's just where I put it into a usable scale. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking yesterday about our good friend Pete Lyman, mastering stuff.
Yes.
And I sort of do the reverse. I print everything on my desk with my meters around 0, and then I elevate the level afterwards for band reference. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I mean, I totally understand that, and VU meters don't really mean anything other than looking at average level. You can have them anywhere, and your level could be as high or as low as you want it to be going out to mastering. It's just it's just all relative, so to speak. But
exactly.
I'm in the same place in my mix bus. Like my mix bus at my desk is probably at plus 12 or so, but then I have multiple faders to bring it down to around 0, like I'm going to a tape machine. It's just interesting that you're kind of doing it the other way around. I find that interesting. It's cool.
I gotta be honest, man. I don't really care about meters all that much.
I'm too old school. I learned how to mix on them. I watch them all the time. So,
I read something a long time ago. I forget. I wish I could remember what's his name. I wish I could remember. He worked with Sly and the Family Stone. Is his last name Fly? But just I read something where he was talking about where he could mix. He could mix it with just watching he can mix stuff with watching the meters. And
Nico Bolas has done it.
There is some truth. There's some truth to that. You get to you after a while you understand what the ballistics of the meter is doing based on the sound, and you can kind of it's just a good reference. I'm not like a huge meter watcher, but there's certain things I just kind of want to see what's going on. And it's just a good visual reference.
See, Russ said apparently Al Schmidt can do it too. Look, anytime you've spent 40 years sitting behind a mixing console, you're gonna correlate what you're hearing and what you're seeing because you've done it enough that it just And thank you so much for giving us all this time, all this great insight. Like, your work is amazing, a constant inspiration. And you're a really nice guy as well. I'm happy
and
to
good
have
looking, and good looking. I would add,
hair.
and very handsome,
sexy. Good.
I love you guys. Hey, shh.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys all for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. Next week, more Nashville friends. The young, kind of good looking too. Sorry, Jacquire.
Oh,
Ryan Hewitt.
Oh, I love Ryan.
Hewitt
Awesome.
next week.
I'll be tuned
my
in for
neighbor.
that.
He's like 2 blocks away from me.
Yeah.
So it'll be kind of funny. He'll be down the street.
And then down the road, we may be dragging in some LA people and some other people. Like, let us know if you have suggestions, if you have questions.
Yeah.
Anything, reach out. We're always around. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Jacquire.
Awesome. Cool.
See you, Mark. Be
very,
good.
very much. Cool.
Yeah.
Guys, just a reminder, a new episode of Vance's Start to Finish series is out. Make sure you go check it out on the site.
Oh, yeah. Check that out.
Yeah. New 50% off sale on sugar. And tomorrow we're going to be back with Daryl Thorpe and Emily Lazar. Daryl's going to be asking Emily a bunch of questions. So tune in, Mastering Hangout tomorrow. Going to have a lot of fun.
Daryl's a total badass as well. Love him.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. Awesome.
Nerd
Cool.
City. Serious Nerd City going
Thanks,
on. Thanks,
guys.
Awesome.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Bye, guys.